Welcome to the Everyday Heroes podcast. Today, we welcome Tenille Bentley, a remarkable Australian business leader, well-being innovator, and music therapist whose impact spans global mental health, education, and emotional intelligence. Tenille built a multi-million-dollar tech and wellness enterprise in under 2 years and was recognized in the Australian Financial Review's Top 100 Women of Influence and the Australian Leadership Awards, and is the founder of Alma Education, the Emotional Literacy and Mindfulness Academy. Along with much more achievements, she continues to mentor, speak, and design programs that promote emotional well-being, leadership, and digital balance. Enjoy the podcast.
Tenille Bentley, welcome to Everyday Heroes podcast by Kofkin Bond, and you are also, like a couple of our recent guests, a repeat offender. So this is the second time you've come on our podcast, and all the way from Perth as well. In saying that, we are doing this one online, but wonderful to see you as always, my dear friend.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure having you here. So now as I said, we have had you as a podcast guest before, and that was from me actually seeing a post that you put up on LinkedIn. It's probably a couple of years ago now. Would that be right? And I think it was International Women. Was it International Women's Day from memory, or
could have been around
yeah,
that time.
yeah? But I still remember vividly seeing the photo of a young Tenille in that at school. So it was it really moved me, and reached out, and we got in contact with each other and become good friends ever since. But I love your journey, and I'm going to have you share some of that journey, if it's okay, with some of our listeners today. So let's look at this. So your journey, you actually built a multi-million-dollar tech company. It's probably in its field, probably one of the first at the time as well. And you did become a global advocate for emotional intelligence. Is remarkable after that, with everything that you've done here. So what's inspired that profound shift in your career, going from tech to actually, which is sort of data-driven? And, we've been in meetings, which is very data-driven as well, and you can really see that tech entrepreneur side of Tenille come out when you're answering those questions. But I also know Tenille from the emotional intelligence side, and one of the most warmest and calmest people I've ever met in my life. So that profound shift in your career, how did that occur?
Yeah, I think it was a moment where there was a poignant moment, and I was employing so many staff, and I was still very young, and I was really learning the ropes of trying to deal with a fast growth company. Made a lot of mistakes, and I learned a lot along the way. And but the biggest moment where there was a real, I call it like a come to Jesus moment. I had people that we were bringing in so quickly that someone walked through the door, and I said, "Can I help you?" And they said, "Yeah, I work here." And it just hit me in the heart. Like, it felt like someone hit me literally in the heart. And I just went, oh my gosh, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be remembered as that person. Most people who knew me back then would have described me as manic. I was highly stressed. I was working 16 to 18-hour days trying to keep up with the fast growth. And I was hospitalized 2 to 3 times as a result of that, from exhaustion and from pushing myself way too much, because underneath all that, I was also living with a chronic illness condition as well, trying to manage that and do everything else at the same time. So, that was the poignant moment. And then I really reflected on, who do I want to be? What's my why? Why do I even do that? Why am I even doing this? And parallel to that, I was running the Global Good Foundation, and that was an organisation that really helped disenfranchised youth and also their families, people who have come from abusive backgrounds. And it was very close to home because that was my journey. And so I was doing that, but then it was kind of like the two parallel came together, and I realised, one, I didn't want to be at the helm of plugging so many people in. Even though I love technology, I still love technology, but I didn't want to be at the helm of that, of running a business in that space. It just didn't feel, at that point when I started to come back into my heart, didn't feel that there was an alignment. And then parallel to that, I was noticing with the charitable organisation, even though we had run many camps and leadership camps and helped so many people, is that I was attracting and polarising the very problem that I was speaking about, which was around domestic violence. And I just found that I wasn't helping the problem. I was actually building on it by talking about it so much, by bringing the focus onto that so much. And so all these things kind of collided.
Is that from reliving, as somebody, then you're talking about so much as somebody's continually reliving that past experience?
Well,
Because your emotions can actually feel that
yeah.
as well when you keep reminding yourself or
Well,
talking about the
our
past.
words carry vibration. They carry, they carry a specific tonal quality to them. And so what I was finding was I was attracting a lot of wounded people to me. And with that came a lot of drama and a lot of toxicity. And I just realized that I'm doing a band-aid solution here. And what I need to do is actually get to the source of the issue. So while these two things started to collide, this is where I sat down and I was either in meditation or prayer, and I was asking, how do I make a sustainable change? God, source, energy. How do I do something significant while I'm on this planet, but do something that is going to make generational change? And all I suppose the knowing, the higher self, or whatever you want to call it, it was a guidance that came through that told me it starts with our children, and it gave me a specific age bracket, and then it was I needed to get to the source of why these behaviors become the way they do later in life, whether it's through violence, abuse, whatever it might be. And that comes down to emotions, understanding them, and emotional intelligence, understanding ourselves, but also not too much, because we're in a very self-focused world nowadays. It's having, even more importantly, awareness of others around us, and that social and spatial awareness as well. And so that's sort of where the emotional intelligence world, I sort of stepped away from those two projects and started to morph and create what's now known as Alma Education. So
Let's touch on Alma Education because, a lot of people will have seen, or if they Google you, you'll seen, you've been inducted into West Australian Women's Hall of Fame. Should just be the Hall of Fame in my opinion, but anyway, Women's Hall of Fame. You also recognise Australian Financial Review Top 100 Women of Influence, but you've gone, I have a look at what you've done in the past, and knowing you very well, and as you know me very well too, there's two sides of you. There's that person who is process driven, goal orientated, wants to, but the real side of Tenille Bentley that I've admired and loved so much is also that unbelievable creative side, which you've actually, because your voice is amazing. I love your voice. Go on Spotify and listen to some of Tenille's music. But also too, you're unbelievably talented when it comes to instruments as well, musical instruments, not just your traditional. So it's not just playing the piano or something like that. So it's not just your traditional instruments as well. And then you've been able to put that and start, Alma Education. You developed this program, enhancing emotional intelligence, which is the side that I really know too, but the mindset for children and educators as well. So that catalyst to creating the initiative, what impacts have you observed yourself? I mean, and has it been because of your, whether, as you said, whether you're meditating or praying, but what came to you is now this is what you've done, and the impact that you've observed for actually doing that. How has that influenced you in respect to even going further with Alma Education as well?
yeah, I feel like it's this constant evolution when you create a business, and you're coming from a place of being of service. and the circumstance is often bigger than you. It changes how we do business. I'm still very much, I have a deep love for business building, and it is an education technology company, because we use online courses and things like that for educators, for schools, for workplaces, and really what it is doing is we're finding that it's addressing mental health issues in a big way. The biggest impact lately that I've seen, we've been in over 40 centres with children who are not even verbal yet, in nappies, and we're seeing a drop in behavioural issues across the board in all the centres. So for me, I look at that as more like a planting a seed metaphor, and that it's that seed has been planted, and those children are going to have those skills, and then translate that to when they're an adult. I really look forward to seeing how they cope with life and how they deal with it, having these tools so young, and then moving it forward and taking it into from say preventative methodologies and therapies to interventionist ones for teenagers and for adults and in the workplace. These are still things that, whilst our brains are fully formed at that point and we're really on that autopilot, through enough repetition, and a lot of the programs that have been developed are all backed and based in neuroscience, because I have a love of that as well. So we really look at how the brain learns and how the brain interacts to be able to really amplify the learning experience, whether they're a child or whether they're an adult in a workplace in a corporate environment.
I think to add to that as well is when you're actually looking at that change, and you and I have sort of had similar upbringings in some ways, but I suppose in knowing both of our stories, when we were kids, you go outside and you're just left to your own device and come back when you're hungry. Now I'm a decade older than you, but it's just over a decade, I think, older than you. But but still, we were of that sort of generation where you just go do what you want and just come back when the street lights go on or when you're hungry. That's the sort of generation. But I think in respect to the traumas that you've faced in your youth, and if anyone wants to know that, you can go, we'll put a link to the original podcast you did with us. But those traumas, I think you're a testament, though, that you're as an adult, you're actually not when I say sorry, playing the victim, that's wrong. That's not showing any empathy at all. Yeah. Yeah, but it's more the fact of that you're not allowing that and those experiences to continually repeat or dictate who the person is, that you've become today. Now, that's something that you've worked on, and you've had the emotional intelligence to actually work on it. Is this something that, in respect to with Alma, that you're really educating people as well, that you're not fixed, you can actually change, even as you do get older?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're looking in the context of in the corporate environment, where our brains and our synaptic connections, our pathways and neural pathways, they're all in many ways solidified, and we're operating in that sort of 95% subconscious autopilot. And there's two ways that can be altered, is either through emotional trauma or emotional impact. It changes us. We have something that happens. We become different. Rewiring occurs. And the second way is through repetition. And so using some of those methodologies as to how we can really start to look at our circumstances not fixed, we can completely change. And I would do this I've done this most of my life. I'd throw myself into like something I've never done, like capoeira, and just see what I do and see how my body would respond and how my brain would respond. And at the time I didn't realize I was doing neuroplasticity and really looking at how to rewire the brain and create new pathways in my in the neural pathways in my brain. And that's really it's great for brain health, but it's also really great for mental health, and also for not allowing ourselves to be identified by the story that we created or had had been created for us, and that that can change, and it takes a lot of work. It's very challenging as you get older to be able to make those changes. So you've really got to work at it, and I've been doing that since I was 17 years old, simply because I had a natural state of self-inquiry, and the trauma was so significant. So I needed to make sure that I do something so I don't end up down the predictable path that I was probably, going to go down. And instead it was, no, I'm gonna shift this and change this story. I'm not the identity that was written for me. I'm going to rewrite that, and I have the power to do that. So, but it takes a lot of time and
It's
repetition.
interesting though, you had the emotional intelligence at the age of 17 to actually look at that, to do that, to make those decisions. So, but also, I think though, I think the saying is attributed to Henry Ford, but it's if you think you can or if you think you can't, you're usually right.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, we are, if we continually, you know, if you sincerely believe, enthusiastically act, inevitably it must come to pass. And, so that's, and the example, I used that once with one of my sons, and he turned around and he goes, well, you'll never be able to run as fast as Usain Bolt. And I made the comment though, I guarantee you'll be correct on that statement. But I will also guarantee you this: if I train hard and hard and hard and hard and hard, I will be far better than what I am right now.
Mm.
But it's also too, you can't just take a happy pill and think positive thoughts for one day. It's doing that consistently
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
the work really shows up when it's tough. When you're facing the challenges, when that old voice and that old story is coming up to really challenge you, that's where the work matters. And that's usually where we default to our old programming. And that's where we can go downward spirals, for people who may experience mental health or stress or anxiety or PTSD or trauma. We tend to go back to the known cycle because our subconscious believes that that's the safe place that it needs to be, because in our mind, even though it doesn't make sense, and logically we think, okay, that's not good for us, but our programming is telling us that's our safe space because that's all we know. So it's just watching those behavior cues and those shifts in the thoughts and how we and how we cope, and make little changes. That's the key, is the little changes, which is why a lot of our learning is micro learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I have been known to say, and you know this, you've heard me say it before as well, with sound therapy and well-being, but on the odd occasion, I fall to sleep with Tenille Bentley's voice in my ear. So it's when I have Spotify, but when I have the Encoder Symphony Orchestra, 432 hertz, playing as I go to sleep, and your beautiful voice. I remember chatting to you and said, it sounds, I don't know whether that sounds Native American or, but it's so, and I do really, I mean, it's the ways, the 432 hertz, but can you explain to our listeners what that is, and Encoder, the Symphony Orchestra, what you've done? And, we will put links to the movie that was shown all around the country. I know you appeared all around the country. You're down here at the Nova in Carlton. I unfortunately happened to be in Sydney that weekend. Then you're in Sydney when I was back in Melbourne. But can you tell our listeners what that is, and what you pioneered in respect to the therapeutic sound research, etc.?
Yeah, so as part of my own journey, it's sort of complementing the emotional intelligence and mindfulness uh, techniques that we teach in Alma. The one thing that I found for myself very soothing was the tool of sound therapy. And so I began that journey, and little did I know that it would end up being a full-blown 14-piece string orchestra and a 15-time award-winning production, and then a film, two films. So there was no way I could have known that I couldn't have planned it if I tried, but I was really coming from a place of seeing how it worked for me. And it just so happened that the instrument that I started with was called a shruti box, which was traditionally used in Indian classical music to tune an orchestra, and often used in group settings like kirtan and things like that. So some people may or may not have heard the instrument. But I just loved the instrument, and I started to write all this music, which then became, little did I know, would become the compositions that now rest with the Encoder Symphony Orchestra. Now, it just so happened that this instrument was tuned to 432 hertz. So when we look at or listen to music, typically it's 440 cycles per second of the sound wave before it hits our ear. And it can, give or take. But typically that's the standard tuning center of most instruments, most music. And so this is tuned down. So it's 432 cycles per second of the sound wave. So it's 432, it runs 432 times. So it's slightly slower, and to the pitch perfect ear, it's slightly flatter. And now it is said there's a lot of theories around it's linked to the mathematical equation of Earth. It's more harmonic to the human body. I just felt, for me personally, it was just more harmonic for me. And so I started there. And as I started there, then I started doing groups, and it got bigger and bigger, and people just responded really well to it. And I saw some profound shifts and changes, not only physical, emotional, spiritual, for the people that were coming to this therapeutic experience. So much so that once we did the orchestra, we had 200-300 people in the audience. We had to have mental health practitioners on board because it was having some really profound shifts for people, and they needed support. So now, in the context of a clinical setting, we've got therapists. In the UK, we've got psychotherapists that are using this for PTSD, for trauma, for patients, and it seems to be having the highest cut through of any tool that they've ever used. So it's got something in it. And so we did pair up with we're still in the early stages of looking at the research around it to really identify, is it the frequency? Is it the way the music is composed? Like what are the elements that are creating what we're seeing as quite profound effects? And then that dovetailed into documenting it into which I'm an exec producer of, for Does Sound Heal, and really diving down that rabbit hole and seeing, what is it about sound? And that's first episode has come out, and then now we're going through trying to get funding to get the next episode underway.
No, and I think, though, also, not so long ago, this might have been classed as woo-woo, for use of a better phrase. But I find people, and my journey. I've been doing meditation for some 15 years now, and I haven't actually missed a morning of meditation for over 12 years. And to me, it's an integral part of starting my day, and helps keep me grounded in a lot of ways, or helps me make better decisions, I think, more than anything. Now, a lot of people would have say, "Oh, what's music got to do?" But it's interesting that if you play upbeat music, you can actually feel upbeat. If you play somber, depressing music, you can feel somber and depressed. I remember when you were in Melbourne and we were chatting about the opera, and you said, and you made a comment to me, just to let you know that if we were to ever go to the opera, I do have a tendency to cry. So it's so you can actually, it does have that emotional effect on you, or can, like a smell, music can bring you back to the first time you heard that song, or can actually bring back memories, which can be good or bad memories, or just help put a smile on your face at the same time. So have you found that because people people do yoga, people do meditation now, do you find with people just not being as skeptical, they're more willing to try um, healing through music now with more of an open mind?
Yeah, I think for me, because I do have a science head as well, I do like the science. And so in the film, we had a lot of professors and academics also quantifying and, the impact of therapeutic music and how it's impacting on many levels. There's still a lot we don't know in the world of science, but I intuitively know. And it's sort of this convergence of as we start to uncover the power of that. And so really, from my position with it, I always come to a point of saying it's about having a different relationship with music. Instead of just switching it on for entertainment, how do we use it as a therapeutic tool when we need it? So, being able to use it as a complementary therapy for many things. And there's a lot to be said around the world of Alzheimer's and dementia, and how music plays a very profound role for people going through that, and being able to reignite some of those memories. So there's a lot that science has already shown, but really the goal of what I do is come from the place of there is the mystical quality, the untouchable, the unmeasurable, that we just don't. Why do the hairs stand on our why do we get goosebumps when we hear a certain song that just moves us? Everybody's been affected by it, and so we know that there's a mystical bucket, and but then there's also the very scientific bucket that's really starting to sort of catch up and show a lot of the benefits of and long-term benefits of exposure to music as a therapy. Yeah.
I mean, you touched on dementia and Alzheimer's, and as you know, my father had that for the last 6 years of his life. But I remember it was a Father's Day luncheon when he was in respite care, and he was there, and I actually wrote a poem. I think I might have shared it with you. But they had a gentleman in there who was just playing the guitar, solo gent, and he was playing all songs from probably around about 30s, 40s, 50s, etc. So just as a solo artist. And it was interesting that my father, who had advanced Alzheimer's at that stage, but not too bad. When I say sorry, not too bad, not like he was obviously at the end. So he's probably about 2 years before his passing. But I looked at, there was a woman up the front, an older woman than Dad, and the singer sung When I Was Sweet 16. And with her thick Irish accent, she just started singing, and the most beautiful voice came out of her. She had Alzheimer's. She sung that song, her eyes lit up. It was just amazing. The moment the song was finished, you could actually see her, basically, the life just fade out of her eyes. It was just going back into her shell and just sitting there again. So sorry, before that little tech interruption there. What I was talking about was how the music really inspired him. But when Dad was, just before he passed away, and at the advanced levels of his Alzheimer's, where he didn't even have a clue who I was, but I'd lie in the bed with him and we would sing all his old songs together, bring them up on YouTube, Simon and Garfunkel, the Beatles, Elvis, etc. And he knew those songs and he loved music, and we would sing them together. But once again, once we stopped singing, in between finding the next song, he would just stop and he just wasn't there anymore either. So from my testament to that is I've seen music have this profound experience with somebody who couldn't even remember that I was his son or remember my name, but singing with him was just, it was our last way of being able to bond together as father and son.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. What advice would you offer aspiring leaders aiming to make a positive impact in their communities today?
If they're aspiring to make a positive impact, the first thing I would advise is really looking at what the motivation is behind the positive impact. What is it? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why does it matter so much to you? And I think it's about positioning yourself in a place where you understand that the circumstance is bigger than you. So whilst we are always being in humble service to humanity and to our community. Yeah.
What a beautiful answer, and an answer that I would expect from you, in all honesty. It is, but it is actually very true, isn't it? Even in respect to some of the goals we have in here, it's being able to, make a huge positive financial impact on people's lives, for the betterment of all the clients that we service. So it's very important that we do our job correctly as the custodians, because I've often said that we are the custodians of people's lives, not just their money, because if we mess up, it can really mess up people's lives as well. So it's very important as well. Future vision, legacy. looking ahead, what are your aspirations for the next phase of your career and personal growth? And we will tell the listeners that yourself, myself, and Peter Turin are forming a group together. So not the Fab Four, even though we can throw Shane there and call ourselves the Fab Four. I don't know what Peter's musical talent is like. But from that perspective, we're helping people who are making change. So we call it the next chapter. So people, it could be going through a divorce. It could be just I'm looking at retiring and taking it to the next phase, and I want to sit on some charitable boards. So in other words, not just waking up one day with nothing to do. So helping people think about that next chapter. And for clients that don't know, you do a lot of public speaking. You are a renowned global speaker, as is Peter as well. So what do you see as the next phase of your career and your own personal growth?
I think the next phase obviously is we've got this beautiful project called The Next Chapter. So that's a big part of it, a big part of how we can be of further service, because I think it's a wonderful project, because everybody's going through some kind of transition. And so how do we adapt and apply some of the skills that I've learned over the years, transitioning through many things? How do we apply that in an emotional intelligence lens, and bringing them the skills that they need to be able to cope with change and to be able to adapt a lot with change? So that's a big part of it. The speaking is still something that I hope to continue to do, and be able to share insights and skills and tools and tips for people. And in the fields of leadership and emotional intelligence, mental health, well-being, women's leadership as well. And I think from there as well, sort of another transition for me is starting to look for some new board positions as well, see where I can use those skills that I've still got. So a little bit of that. And then Alma Education as well is obviously a big piece of the puzzle. Continuing to expand globally. We've got Australia, India, UK, US. So that's really important to us.
No, that's actually very, very exciting. Actually, I've seen some of the things you're doing, and going international as well, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, it's been great to see. Now that we've got the development of the corporate program, we're looking forward to taking that into workplaces and really starting to hopefully stop the bleeding of mental health issues and suicides in Australia.
Yeah, it's a real thing. Having worked with one of the charities, Carry On as well, and in the veterans space, and suicide and people taking their lives and addictions. It's horrible. It's horrible to witness. It really is to see. It's an epic. It's a lot of people don't think so because it can be a bit silent. But when you're touched by it, because you've seen it happen to someone, it does stay with you.
It affects so many people, and it's great now to see that part of the work health safety legislations in place for the psychosocial framework. So, we tick all those boxes to bring that into workplaces. And I'm just really pleased to see that that's become a law, that we need to look after people's mental health, because we are pushing them so much. And, we're humans. We can only hold so much, and we need to make sure that we find balance in the noise.
Yeah, it was interesting. We were having a conversation yesterday, some of the younger members in the team here, and we were talking about, when I was growing up, if you wanted to be a smart mouth to somebody, you basically had to say to them or say to their face, and that could cause violence. So you usually were a little bit better behaved, as out of fear of violence. But nowadays, the amount of online bullying, which is done anonymously, it's horrifying. It is absolutely horrifying. So my children were probably at the start of that in respect to their ages, but kids who are being born today and are going to know nothing different than whatever it's social media now, and what it might be in 10 or 20 years time is something different. But it's horrific, of what some kids are forced to go through now as a result.
Yeah, it's a really big issue that needs support, and that's why for me with what we do with children is give them the tools to cope with those things. So how do you cope with being bullied or being a bully? And having those skills to be able to shift and change those and have deeper levels of compassion and empathy, because the world right now needs a lot of that.
Totally agree. Uh, Thank you for what we've done so far, but I'm going to finish on some rapid questions if that's okay, Tenille. So it's what's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
Meditate is one. Or it changes every morning. So I'll go with this morning, was a meditation.
Okay. Coffee or a green smoothie?
Green smoothie.
No, and having had lunch with you, yes, you do like your smoothie. Very healthy one. Down the veggie bar there in Fitzroy. What's one book that every entrepreneur should read? Or
The
bud or
Divine Law
budding
of
or budding or
Compensation.
budding entrepreneur as well. Sorry, what was that?
The Divine Law of Compensation by Marianne Williamson.
Okay, I haven't heard of that one. I'll have to look it up. I will put a link to that, Bella, in the show notes as well. If you weren't in business, what do you think you'd actually be doing?
An athlete.
Yeah, I would have thought musician.
But that's sort of my work now, so I suppose I'll put it in the work bucket.
Do you call it work, or do you just call it a passion of yours that actually? Because I don't think
Mm,
you wake up in the morning and say, "Oh my God, I have to go and be a musician again."
yeah.
It is something that you love to do.
Yeah, when you do it a lot, you will be surprised. I do get when I do too much of it, like it becomes starts to feel like a task, and that's where I've got to stop and make. There's a balance between being of service and enjoying the process, but then also creating space for the creativity and the passions to still be ignited. So if you do too much of anything, it becomes, arduous. So yeah, it's just that little balance. But yeah, no, an athlete would have been I was a state gymnast when I was younger, so I always have that side to me. That would be like if there was anything else I would have wanted to be, it would have been that.
Wonderful. Okay, who's one Australian entrepreneur that you really admire right now?
I would say the first person that pops into my mind, also a beautiful friend and a sister, but she's very inspirational, and is Rabia Sadiq. She has written a book of her being held hostage in a war situation, and she's become a very close friend, but she's also an incredible woman, just humanitarian lawyer, and just a woman with a cause.
We actually had her as a guest speaker at one of our conferences, probably 3 years ago now, 2 or 3 years ago. I'm trying to think. Oh, was it the Canberra conference? But yeah, an amazing story. Absolutely amazing story.
It's incredible.
Yeah, so it's yeah, she lives in Perth, doesn't she? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so she does. Most underrated skill in business.
Emotional intelligence. That's a loaded one, but it's true.
It is very, very true. What's your guilty pleasure after a long week of work?
I would say, let's see, because I have my body experiences a chronic condition. It means that I have a very small window of what I can and cannot enjoy. So a treat for me is maybe having something like a coconut milk hot chocolate and watching a really good movie. So simple pleasures.
Very simple pleasures, but wonderful pleasures. It's I've actually quite enjoyed over the last few months actually going to the movies by myself. Actually,
Yeah,
so it's and when I'm at the movies by myself, I have no one there to judge me if I eat a choc top. So, so that's always a good thing too. You've been involved and seen a lot of pitches in your day. So, what's your biggest pet peeve if somebody was to pitch something to you?
is when it's self-serving,
Yeah, that's
when there's that ego. too much ego. I think a bit of healthy ego is great in business. You got to have it, but you got to know how to work with it so it doesn't take over you like a big monster.
Most valuable things you've ever learned from a mistake?
Is that everyone makes them?
Sorry?
Is that everyone makes them? Makes mistakes,
Very, very true.
and that you're okay and you're not alone in making any mistake, and it's not a mistake. It's actually going to be a very big part of your learning journey.
Yeah, I think if you haven't made a mistake in life, you haven't tried anything in life, have you?
No.
Yeah. So let's finish on this one. Finish this sentence for me, Tenille. Success is?
Freedom.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Tenille Bentley, thank you very much, my dear friend, for coming on today. We are looking at, we have done a soft launch in some type of way, asking some questions about the next chapter to our, I think, combined 40,000 odd followers as well. Looking forward to seeing you down in Melbourne next as well. When you do get down to Melbourne, we'll have to get you onto a decent board here in Melbourne to get you down a bit more. And next time, bring January and she can come to the veggie bar as well, which I know she knows very well too. So, Tenille, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure and a joy to connect with you.
Wonderful.
The Kofkin Bond podcast is a product from Kofkin Bond Company, which we are an authorized representative of Count Financial. All information in this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional, finance, legal, or tax advice. The hosts of the Kofkin Bond podcast are not aware of your personal financial circumstances. Before making any financial decision, you should read the product disclosure statement and, if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. Do not take financial advice from the podcast. For more information, head to the disclaimer page on the Kofkin Bond website, or you can find resources on the ASIC website and find a registered financial professional near you. In the spirit of reconciliation, Kofkin Bond Co. and the hosts of the Kofkin Bond podcast acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today.